Hello and welcome. I'm Becky McRae from Oklahoma.
And I'm Deb Brown from Iowa. Now, you have a big idea to make your town a better place, and you're getting tired of all the hard work to do such a big thing. Tired of beating your head against the city council wall asking for approvals, killing yourself trying to raise enough money to do the whole thing, and talking to everyone, and they all like the idea, but no one's taking action. There is another way. In small towns especially, big ideas are best accomplished by taking small steps. At Savior.town, we developed the idea-friendly method for small towns to do big things. And there are just 3 parts. You will gather your crowd around your big idea, create a powerful network by building connections, and then take small steps to achieve that big idea.
Okay, the idea-friendly method focuses on how to scale your big idea down. We want to begin by using your big idea to gather your crowd. And you want a crowd of people, so you're not the only one working to make it happen. And then we're going to crowdsource to actually make it happen. So how do you do that? Well, you begin by putting your big idea out there for people to choose to gather around it. So you talk about your big idea online and social media and all your social media places, and be sure to invite conversation, participation, so people will be drawn to you. Invite your friends to coffee or to share a beer or a drink and just talk about the big idea. Now, for instance, you might want a brewery in your town. Well, then meeting with home brewers over a beer to talk about it is one way to get that process started of gathering your crowd to you. An important principle in gathering your crowd is to be conspicuous doing your thing in public. Be conspicuous doing your thing in public. For example, if your big idea includes cleaning up the downtown, then take a friend or 2 with you and get out and sweep on the sidewalk, even a little bitty section, because while you're doing that, it gives you the perfect opening to talk to everyone who walks by, and everyone who drives by also sees you, and you know that will start some conversation. Now, don't worry about people who are not interested in it. They're not interested. That's fine. People who are negative, they're not your crowd either. When you have gathered a crowd that is excited about your big idea, that makes it exciting because you create a groundswell of support. And that makes it much easier when later it's time to go get those big government approvals or to get support from other large groups. Then you have a lot more support to show them, to make it easier for them to say yes when they need to. Now, we recognize you have done this. You have been talking to people about your big idea all along. Now you'll be doing it with a defined purpose to gather people into your crowd, knowing that you are about to turn them into a powerful network.
And that leads us to the second part of Idea Friendly. Build connections. You have a crowd. Now you want to make it a powerful network ready to take action. When you build connections between people, you're turning them into a network. You network your way into everything you need through building connections. You and all the members of your network know people. You know people who have things you need: knowledge, information, conversations, and of course, money. And that actually gives purpose to your conversations. When you share your idea, instead of people responding with the same old, "That sounds like a good idea," now you'll be able to ask them for specific connections. They'll be able to connect you to something that moves the idea forward. You will want to ask people, who do you know that might know more about this? Ask people where you can get something small you need. And while you're asking, ask who they know that has resources that are going to be helpful too. Maybe your big idea is a daycare center for your small town. Who could ask your crowd? You could, I'll get it right yet. You could ask your crowd, who do you know that already has run a daycare center? Maybe in another town that we can talk to. Or who do you know that has some toys or furniture that might want to be donated? Or who do you know who might want to help move this forward? One exciting part of building connections is to get people together in person. Talking to each other creates community and creates a sense of belonging around your big idea, which is now their big idea too. Remember the home brewers that we talked about a little bit ago? Not only is that gathering your crowd, they are going to network and build connections with each other over a beer. They'll start talking about suppliers and who else they know, who made the leap from home brewer to microbrewery, and all sorts of ideas to promote it. That helps them move the big idea forward.
Now, you have gathered your crowd and you are building connections. You have people and resources. Together, it is now time. Take the small steps. Now, you take small steps by finding the tiniest possible version of your idea. Try it as a pop-up or just a demonstration, or can you even make a mock-up to show what it would look like if we did do the big idea? So try temporary things to see if your idea will work right here. Now, as a bonus, when you take small steps like this in public, it gathers more of your crowd to you. So you see how all three parts of the Idea Friendly Network fit right together. Now, and the essential principle of taking small steps is to make room for lots of contribution by as many people as possible. So you're going to give everyone small but meaningful ways to participate. That's the key phrase, small but meaningful ways to participate for everyone. Not everyone is capable of serving on that year-long committee. But, you know, lots of more people might be able to, say, join a photo walk through downtown and then contribute the photos they took, even if they couldn't be on the promotions committee year-round. So if your big idea was something like, well, I really want to see somebody open an ice cream shop in this town. Well, then why not? Let's see if we can figure out, take small steps, small way. Let's set up a table in an empty lot on some afternoon, and let's just give away a few ice cream bars for free to people and talk about it. So you're going to hand people notes telling them more about your big idea and where you're talking about it online so they can come join that conversation and move it forward. You're going to talk to everyone while you're out there. And then, you know, maybe even have some chairs. Now it's a pretend ice cream parlor itself. It's a table, it's some chairs. We're just having a great time talking about and moving the idea forward. And so you're taking that small step, you're doing the tiny temporary pop-up version of your idea and gathering your crowd by being conspicuous, doing your thing in public, and then you're building connections as people are talking about the big idea. They're talking to each other while they're there. They're joining the conversation online. They're talking to each other about it then. You know, lots of photos are going to get posted. That's the idea-friendly process. Okay, now that we've introduced you to the idea-friendly method, let's focus on taking small steps. When you have a big idea, it's tempting to focus on the big action, the big ideas, the big money, big steps, but that keeps you from making progress right now. And it means you can't fully, meaningfully involve everyone in your idea.
I'm going to share some examples, Becky. So to help you adapt this method to your own big idea, we are going to share some stories of real people who have used small steps to accomplish their big ideas. As we tell each story, I want you to think of ways you could adapt a small part of what they did to your own idea. And if we don't mention an idea like yours, feel free to tell us more about your idea in the comment box at the bottom of the page. You know, that comes to both of us by email, and we will work with you to find a way to take small steps towards your big idea. Kristen Simons in Belle Fourche, South Dakota, has a big idea to build a strong arts scene in town. And she started with a really simple small step of asking people online, who else could she connect with? She posted it on her own Facebook page. She said, who on my Facebook list are artisans, bakers, artists, woodworkers, painters, upcyclers, cooks, etc. I'd love to hear more about what you do. And if you aren't one, I'd love recommendations of who I should connect to in this community. You know, she got a lot of responses. It's gathering her crowd. And to build on that small step, she could share people's responses, tag the artists who were mentioned, and that would keep the discussions going. Another small step, she could invite these artists to exhibit at a local event. You know, one small step leads to another, and they do build up to big results. Bennettsville, South Carolina, had this big idea that they could be more welcoming as a community. So they decided on a small step of hosting a get-together to welcome their new residents. All the people that had moved to town in the past year were invited by their realtors to attend this gathering. And new residents had a chance to ask a lot of questions like, can they burn their garbage? Or where do they change their licenses at? Or who should they contact for what? People also shared their backgrounds a bit and asked how they could be more involved in the community. They heard about the empty buildings and possibilities for starting new businesses in town. They found out how to volunteer at various places. Since that meeting, 2 of the people who attended have opened a new business, and a group of people have volunteered and helped clean up their neighborhoods. In my town, Webster City, Iowa, we wanted to bring back our local movie theater that was closed. Once we had raised enough to buy the building, there was still over $200,000 to raise before we could open. Rather than wait until all the money was raised and all the plans were drawn up, we opened the doors and invited people into the building several times. One day, we sold old movie posters for $5 each. Another Saturday, we asked everyone to come help, and we cleaned the basement. Now, these were small but very meaningful steps people could take to help save the theater. And they really mattered. And they helped give everyone the opportunity to claim their part in saving the theater.
I really love that idea of giving everyone their own part they can claim in the big idea. It makes me think of the Fogg behavioral model. Professor B.J. Fogg put together this entire model of how do you actually change people's behaviors. And in order to do that, you have to think of what is the behavior you want. Well, we want them to help with the big idea. We want them to help save the theater. So then it matters then what's their motivation? How motivated are they? Well, some people are super excited about it. They're probably already involved. Others have, medium motivation, or maybe they just have a little motivation. They think it would be nice. And so, you've got a whole curve of what people's motivation looks like. So then the question is, what's their ability? How able are they able to do those things? So if they're not very able at all, don't ask them for too much. So if you've got somebody that is, maybe super motivated, but they don't have a lot of physical ability, don't ask them to come move cinder blocks or concrete blocks. Ask them to share things online. Be sure you match the size of your ask to each person's ability and their motivation. And then you need a trigger. The trigger is, what's happening right now so I have a reason to do the thing. And that trigger in this case was the times when they're opening the doors gave people an excuse to come in. And I'm sure, Deb, when you guys were selling movie posters at $5 each, you had a lot of people come in and have conversations that were not about movie posters, but were about saving the theater.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. So that's the whole Fogg behavioral model, is bringing together, making sure you're giving people all sizes of steps they could take so that they can find their own part, claim their own stake in your big idea, and make sure that even if you're not asking them to do a big thing, make sure that what you ask from them, small but meaningful, but matches their motivation and their ability. So if you have a wide range of things you ask, a lot more people can be part of it. So the next thing that we want to talk about is an example of doing this this one's from Winoka, Oklahoma. And these are my neighbors. They actually have this big idea. They've been working for years now on improving their downtown. And one business owner decided that they wanted to start with the utility poles. That was the next thing that they wanted to work on, because of course utility poles used to be painted that lovely industrial silver color that utility poles get painted. Well, they needed a new coat of paint. They looked pretty. They needed a new coat. So now, of course, this is on the city government's to-do list. Sometime they'll get the public works people out there and they'll repaint the poles. Well, there's no reason that you can't do something that's actually helpful to the city government. It's okay to do that. Now, one business owner decided she was going to start with that, so she started by gathering her crowd. She talked to a lot of other business owners. She talked to the chamber. She talked to lots of different community groups, and they went to work. Each group painted their own pole. So there's all these different poles downtown, all kinds of creative designs. None of them match, which I think is perfectly fine. Instead of in boring industrial silver, what they have is they've got one that's painted with trains from their museum. And they've got one that's covered in flames because it's got the fire department. That's their pole. And then there's one for a youth group. And so it's covered with kids' handprints. Now, this is so cool. They didn't wait for the huge downtown improvement project to get totally funded and millions of dollars and years and not, don't do anything until we have the whole thing ready. No, they started with one step involving everyone in painting just one feature downtown. I thought that was a really smart project to take on something that lots of people could have a small but meaningful role in. Of course, that was not the end of the improvements in downtown Wanoka. There's lots more. But even when the big idea involves governments and grants and big budgets and long timelines, there are always ways to involve a lot more people in taking small steps. The city government actually got a grant to redo the streetscape downtown. So that means new lights, new sidewalks, everything. But in the first phase of that project, their architect comes in with 3 plans of how the downtown streetscape could look, 3 different alternatives, and then kind of drops them on the council table and says, you should pick one. Okay, well, that's really hard to just look at those plans and come up with the right decision. So it sat that way for a long time waiting on the decision, and it was all up to those volunteer council members, who none of whom are professional engineers or anything, to look at those plans and make a decision. So how could you get everyone in town involved in that picking of the streetscape without it just turning into a big mess of people complaining? Well, you could start with a copy of one of the plans, and then you go out in person into the downtown and you take your duct tape, and where it says there should be a ramp on the sidewalk, then you mark it off with the duct tape and you label it ramp. And then where it says there should be plants here in this bump out, there should be plants around here. We should have a planting. So you go get some potted plants and you drag them out there and you arrange them just like it says that should be on the plan. And where it calls for brick, then maybe we're going to go borrow some bricks from somebody. Or maybe we'll get some contact paper that looks like bricks or something. And so we'll put bricks there. So we're going to make it look like what it would look like as much as we can with bricks and duct tape and borrowed plants, make it look like what the downtown plan calls for. And then, I mean, if you just stop there, that's actually great, because even the council members would have a much easier time making a decision that way if you did all 3 versions. But I don't want you to stop there. There's so much more that we could do to involve everyone in the community. Let's do this on a weekend. Let's hold a little festival at the same time. We need to do some pop-up businesses. We need things going on the empty lots. We need to have performances and poetry readings and something going on in the pocket park. And we need to get everyone in town to come downtown and be listening and watching and walking around and experiencing the streetscape mock-up, as well as all of that community. So what works? You can be watching, see what works and what doesn't. What do people trip over time after time? It's maybe not a great idea. Is there any way to gather people's ideas while they're down there? Could you just talk to people while they're being part of it? And then do the same thing with plan number 2 a week later or a month later. It still would be a lot faster than the years it took for the council to just kind of look at those plans and not have any good idea. And the whole town got a chance, small but meaningful roles. Even if all you did was come downtown on the day we did that festival, you had a part in picking the new streetscape layout because you had a small but meaningful role in it. Now, isn't that a much cooler way to draw a lot of people in rather than leave the big idea in the hands of only a few people?
Absolutely. And I said it before, but I'm going to say it again. In small towns especially, big ideas are best accomplished by taking those small steps. Mike Larson and some other people in Sugar Creek, Missouri want to have a city pool again. Now, it'll be a long and expensive project, but first they want to find out how much interest there is before they start. They're going to host a day at the pool where the old pool used to be. They'll mark the outline of the old pool on the ground with paint or string or something, and they're inviting everyone in town, all the current residents, former residents, all the people with memories of the pool, to bring their little blue wading pools or beach chairs or anything like that. They will provide the water to fill those wading pools, and I promise you everyone will have a great time. They'll talk about their big idea, they'll build connections, and they'll start to find some resources they may need.
I just love this whole idea of everybody bringing their little pools. We're having a day at the pool, but there's no pool.
So bring your own. Yeah, it's great. I love it too. Now, if you're struggling to think about small steps that could lead to your big idea, well, you start by asking questions. And asking questions leads to conversations that leads to building community and getting things done. I'm going to tell you the story about home brewers and the questions I asked around their big idea. And as you listen, I'd like you to think of the questions you could ask around your big idea. When I visited Decatur County, Iowa, several people said they wanted a brewery. And they talked about the big barriers in their way, finding the right building, the right funding, the right people. The big idea seems really hard this way. Well, why not start smaller? And here are some of the questions I suggested they ask themselves and each other to help them start small. So gather your crowd. Who in the county already makes homebrew? Who wants to talk about finding a place for adults to hang out at? Who's interested in finding a way to bring new businesses to town? Well, invite them to come together over a beer and talk about beer. Share the big idea of having a brewery. Talk to each other and think about all the ideas. Build connections. Well, who knows who that already started a brewery? Go visit them. Find out what they had to do to get there. Start finding out the things you need to know. Licensing, manufacturing, laws, all that kind of stuff. What resources does your local community already have that you could use? Who do you talk to get access to these resources? Who knows other home brew clubs you could visit? Take small steps. Have your home brewers do a sampling. See if people really are interested in having a brewery. Maybe form a home brew club. Try things out. Test your market, test your product. Could you offer free samples in an empty building downtown? And then visit about some ways to use that building to bring adults together. Could you set up at a local event in a beer tent environment? Maybe use monies collected to support that event. Again, bring people together over a beer to talk about the possibilities.
Deb, you've got beer on your mind.
I have beer on my mind. It's just close to Friday, huh?
Okay, well, you have everything you need. This is a story that happened to me while I was visiting a community in Illinois, but I think you can relate to it. We kind of get in this habit of thinking we don't have everything we need, that there's the things that we are lacking, and that's what we're focused on instead of looking at what we have right now. So people would bring up things in this one community. Oh, well, the city council, they're wasting all this time and money on the wrong priorities. I don't like what they're doing. And this local foundation, they're giving money to the wrong things. That's wrong-headed. And there aren't any entrepreneurs in town. We're going to have to recruit entrepreneurs to our community from the outside. And I kind of stepped back from that. I said, well, what if the answers to all of those is already at hand? What if you already have all of that? It doesn't matter what the council is doing because you don't need them to get started. Go do your thing. Start by gathering your crowd. You don't need their permission or anything. Just let the council or whoever that is doing something you don't like, let them do their own thing and you do your own thing. And it doesn't matter what that foundation is funding. You don't need their money to start. It doesn't take any money to start conversations. Taking small steps is supposed to not cost money. So you're just doing small steps around the thing that matters to you. If you think it takes money, then your steps are probably too big. Take smaller steps than that where it takes no money at all. You don't need to recruit outside entrepreneurs from somewhere else because you have your own people. They might be kids who are in school that could do entrepreneurship projects in school. Maybe it's families with lower incomes that could start little tiny side businesses as a way to improve their financial standing. Maybe it's retired seniors. Retired people are starting businesses in huge rates compared to the rest of the population. But whoever it is, you have potential entrepreneurs right now. Start with them. So anytime you think there is something that you need before you can start by gathering your crowd. You need that crowd so you can build connections. And when you build connections, you build your network, and your network turns out to be where you find all those resources that you need. Your network is also where you find the innovative ideas that let you solve a problem in a way that you would never have guessed on your own. So think about the thing that you need, this thing that's driving you crazy because somebody else is doing something you don't like, and pretend for a minute that none of that matters at all. At all. The only thing you need is the idea-friendly method, and that brings you the people and the connections, and the action steps are perfectly doable.
You know, Becky, take a couple of minutes here just to talk about social capital.
Oh, I love to talk about social capital because as we're doing these 3 steps, what we're doing is building what sociologists call the social capital, which is a nice way of saying you're building community. But it's social capital is that asset that allows you to build a stronger, more resilient community. And there's been tons and tons of research done on the idea of social capital. And it actually, that the bonding capital is where you connect with people like yourself. So that's as you first beginning, you're connecting with more people like you, who are other people that are home brewers and interested in beer, or other people that are, parents and they're interested in having a daycare. But it's whatever the people that are like you, that's your bonding social capital. And then you have bridging social capitalists, which is where you're meeting people that are in different groups in your community. You may find it's not just working parents who are interested in a daycare, but that educators are also interested in seeing that happen, or another entirely different group of people. So you're building bridges in your community. And then linking is this is where we use our connections. We're building linking social capital by linking out to other resources, in maybe even from other communities, and bringing those together. Now, the reason we care about any of that, we don't care what any of those names are, we don't care about any of that fact, except that we know that when we connect our people in our community, we're building a stronger, more resilient community. And the research on this shows that we actually end up with a community that has higher average incomes, lower poverty rates, lower dropout rates, higher high school completion rates, lower risk of death due to chronic illness, and many other positive indicators proved by study after study after study that show building community is the best way not only to solve our existing problems, but to put us in the position to be a strong, resilient community that can handle whatever is thrown at us.
Thank you, Becky. Well, let's conclude here. But first, I want to talk about this question we get asked all the time. Why take small steps? When do we get to do the big steps? It seems like it would be great if we could just jump in and have all the money we need to accomplish our big ideas. That rarely happens. Even when it does, there were still already a lot of small steps taken behind the scenes. More often, receiving a huge chunk of money is a disadvantage, actually making it harder to accomplish the big idea because you didn't have the groundwork in place. You didn't take the small steps first. And here's what small steps actually give you. They give you confidence. Each small step accomplished builds your abilities and your beliefs in your idea. Small steps give you the permission to fail. And failure's not such a big deal if you fail smaller and quicker. You have the opportunity to correct your course in a more manageable way. Small steps get more people involved. When you give small but meaningful ways for people to participate, they will. It gives them the power to have real connection to your big idea as well. It's like it was part of their idea too. Small steps give you the ability to not be attached to the outcome. This just means your big idea might turn out to be different looking once it's done, once it's accomplished. And it will have turned into a big idea supported and built by many, not few. And small wins more often are accomplished with small steps. Small wins are reasons to celebrate and feel good about that big idea that everybody shares. In small towns especially, big ideas are best accomplished by taking small steps.
Okay, that's the whole thing. That's everything that we just covered for you, the whole idea for today about taking small steps. That's where all of the good stuff happens. Cut those big ideas down. Now, we would love to have your stories, your ideas, your questions, and any of your big ideas and the small steps that you can take to accomplish them. If you're not sure what you could do, we can always think of some kind of a crazy way to take small steps and make it fun. So put those into the comment box at the bottom of the page. those come to both of us by email, we will answer you individually, we promise. So thank you very much for your time and attention today. I'm Becky McRae from Oklahoma.
And I am Deb Brown from Iowa. Thank you.